Hello, I'm Julian Whittle from Cumbria Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here with the railway engineer Cedric Martindale, who is spearheading the campaign to reopen the railway between Penrith and Keswick. Cedric, the line from Penrith to Workington was a victim of the infamous Beeching report. It closed west of Keswick in 1966, with the Penrith to Keswick section following in 1972. Why reopen it now?
Poor Dr. Beeching gets the blame again. The real reason that the line closed was to make way for a new fast road which later became the A66.
Yep.
And that was designed to serve the Leyland bus factory at Workington, which has also sadly gone. The short-term remedy seen by the Department of Transport was to turn the railway into a road. Fortunately, there was enough political and public protest to stop that, and the line closed in sections. Reopen it now, same reasons it was built in the first place, connecting the economies of the Cumbrian coast, the centre of Cumbria, and it used to work all the way across the Pennines to the industrial areas of the northeast. Business, commerce, leisure have all changed, but people still want to travel between all these places, and if anything, more so than before.
Yeah, I mean the railway network as a whole has seen a real renaissance, hasn't it, in the last 20 years in terms of the numbers of people using it. So,
certainly have. Yeah. There's more people travelling now than a century ago when there was twice the trackage.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? So you formed CKP Railways, which is short for Cockermouth, Keswick and Penrith. CKP Railways in 1998 to take forward the reopening project. You've sold bonds to raise £400,000 and you've produced a business case. Can you summarise the findings?
Sure. The costings are quite reasonable. The railway can be rebuilt. It's not physically too difficult. In engineering terms, it's a relatively simple project. Business-wise, predicted passenger numbers between 250,000 and 500,000 a year, on a similar level to the Windermere branch or more.
Yep.
Probably more because the Windermere branch is just an end of a line with nothing along the way. Keswick to Penrith would link into Penrith and Carlisle and neatly link three very interdependent economies.
What sort of economic benefits would the railway bring, particularly for businesses along the road? How would they benefit?
The biggest thing for Keswick would be lifting the cap on the amount of business it can do. Keswick at the moment is strangled when the car parks are full. Nobody else can get into the town. If you have another way of getting people in and out that doesn't rely on roads, then you can immediately increase the size of the market for every business. There's also the potential to link businesses in Keswick that want part-time and seasonal workers to student communities in Penrith and Carlisle. There's more potential, more opportunity for young people to stay in Keswick and travel out to the facilities, education, job opportunities that they want elsewhere. Helps stop the age and brain drain.
I mean, that's certainly something that the Chamber can back up, in the sense that we know from members in Keswick how difficult it is for them to recruit staff. So anything that would make, if you like, enlarge the travel to work area for Keswick would be very valuable. Well,
by train, Carlisle would be 40-45 minutes away, which is a comfortable journey.
Yeah, I think at the moment there are just 4 buses a day, and they're not suited for people who are working. They're just aimed at shoppers and visitors.
They fill in between school times.
Yeah.
Also, for example, hotels, guest houses in Keswick, a lot of them have staff bedrooms because people can't get there from a distance. Now, with the railway, yes, you could bring people in from further away, and visitor businesses might find that they can actually let some of those bedrooms. So, without any expenditure at all, their earning capacity goes up. Everybody wins.
So, have you got a ballpark figure then for the cost of reopening the line?
In round figures, for a simple single track railway end to end, which would give you 1 train an hour. That's around about 50 to 60 million. It might be possible to save a little bit on that using local knowledge, but for an all singing, all dancing railway, it's somewhere in the region of 100 to 120, which may sound a lot of money, but that would buy you 1 airliner, or if you wanted to build a road along the way, it's a fraction of the cost of building even a single carriageway road all the way.
So I suppose the crucial question is, if it would require an investment of that level, what can a railway offer that, let's say that the stagecoach bus service between Keswick and Penrith can't offer?
Well, the bus service is fine for a short distance for linking local communities. It isn't fast enough to be attractive for interregional transport. By building a mainline standard railway from Keswick to Penrith and literally bolting onto the national network, you could have trains from Keswick through to Carlisle, Newcastle, Glasgow, Manchester, Birmingham, anywhere that people want to go for business, leisure, airports, international connections. It would make life so much simpler and so much quicker. People don't go on business trip by bus, unfortunately.
That's true.
Putting a railway back in would put Keswick back on the map.
Yeah.
And people arriving at international airports, they're either going to hire a car or look at a rail map. And Keswick doesn't exist.
And of course, I suppose with Carlisle Airport about to reopen, a direct rail link from Carlisle to Keswick would fit in very nicely with that, wouldn't it?
It'd be nice to get a link into the airport as well.
Yeah. So how do you envisage the line working? Would it be managed by Network Rail like the rest of the network, with trains operated by Northern Rail, who operate most of the services in Cumbria?
What we envisage is the line being managed, the infrastructure, the track, the stations independently by us, and the train services being provided by the national network providers. The obvious candidate is Northern Rail. TransPennine would have an interest, possibly ScotRail, and there are independent operators locally, Direct Rail Services and West Coast Railways, who could provide services as well.
Why go for that model? Because I think it's quite interesting. It's a bit different. Why would you want to manage the track and not simply hand it over to Network Rail?
Well, Network Rail's brief is to manage the existing network, and its budget is fixed according to that. They really aren't in a position to take on additional responsibilities. And the 1993 Railways Act recognised that and opened the way for independent concerns to operate railways and provide trains, all working to the same standard, all regulated the same way. What matters is not the ownership, but the attitude of the people who manage it.
Are you encouraged by the success of the Borders Railway in Scotland, the line between Edinburgh and Tweedbank, part of the old Waverley main line that used to run right through to Carlisle? Now, that reopened in 2015, and the response has been really positive, hasn't it?
It certainly has. It's nice to see something positive virtually on the doorstep. Yes, it is a good example. It's not quite a carbon copy, but it's a good pointer. The big thing to note is that the expected passenger numbers were surpassed very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's been the case with other reopenings, including, for example, Ebbw Vale, which tripled its predicted passenger numbers.
From a business point of view, one of the interesting things I picked up doing a bit of digging into that is that the further education college in the Borders at Galashiels has seen a huge increase in the number of applicants for its courses from students coming from the Edinburgh direction who wouldn't have considered going out to Galashiels without the railway. So it goes back to what you were saying about travel to work areas and travel to learn areas.
Well, a railway is a great form of pay-as-you-go travel. You don't have to have any pre-investment in the car, in insurance, in anything else.
True, yeah.
You just turn up and go.
Yeah. So it's particularly important to young people who might struggle to afford a car or the insurance premiums for one. So, what are the physical obstacles to reopening? I know that some structures were damaged or even washed away by Storm Desmond in 2015. So to what extent is the track bed intact?
The track bed, the earthworks are roughly 90% intact. Where they've been damaged or removed, there's still an empty space that the railway can go back in. The major structure that has to be built is a bridge over the A66 at Penrith. We would not even look at a level crossing there. It wouldn't get approval. It would be a disaster waiting to happen. But the way the ground lies, that's actually quite simple to do. We've had that all designed. We even have a virtual reality model of what it would look like. So yes, there are a few small bridges that need to be put back in. Some of them might actually not be needed now. There are no public level crossings between Keswick and Penrith, which was a very forward-thinking piece of design. The railway was laid out for speeds much greater than were achieved in the 1860s, so it's a modern railway waiting to happen.
What would the end-to-end journey time then be from Penrith to Keswick if the line were reopened?
About 25 minutes, including 2 or 3 stops with a modern train.
So that's about half the time of the bus. And no structures, nothing would have to be demolished, in the sense nothing's been built physically, no buildings being built on the track bed since the line closed.
There's no houses along the line. There are a few agricultural buildings. By negotiation with landowners, it should be possible to find a way to move them, provide alternative solutions. Yes.
Now the section between Keswick and Threlkeld is being converted into a footpath and cycleway, although because we know we're talking about Storm Desmond closing it, it's no longer a through route at the moment. In fact, I was in Threlkeld over the bank holiday, and there's quite a campaign going to get those links reinstated, because I think it's sort of damaged the businesses in Threlkeld not getting the walkers coming through from Keswick. What would that footpath and cycleway be lost if the railway was reinstated?
It would most certainly not be lost. It would need to be rerouted in places. For part of the route, it's possible to put a path immediately alongside the railway, parallel to the fence. Putting side decks on the bridges would get you across many of the river crossings.
Right, yeah.
There are a couple of places, the rock cuttings and the tunnels, for example, where obviously you couldn't have people walking through with trains running, but there are ways to get around them. We have had it all put through a feasibility study, and we've got costings to produce a better standard of path than is there now, complementing the railway, so people could go one way by train, the other way on foot or cycle. People who might at the moment not feel adventurous enough to do the whole trip from Keswick to Threlkeld might feel more inclined to walk all the way to Threlkeld, have a nice lunch, and then come back on the train.
Okay. So is the scheme getting traction with official bodies? I'm thinking here, organisations such as the Lake District National Park, Cumbria County Council and Transport for the North.
The Lake District National Park Authority is definitely the leader in this respect. They were the first to protect the route within their boundary, and they have a vision for rail transport across the national park, restoring links not just Keswick and Penrith but further in both directions. Linking the local economies and reaching out to the places where visitors come from. More than half of the Lake District's visitors come from the northeast of England, so reinstating a link across the Pennines would do wonders. If you compare a trunk road map and a rail map of the UK, there's a broad similarity, which is what you would expect thinking of inter-regional transport. Yeah. And a glaring blank space is the A66 all the way across.
Yes, because that's the railway there went a long time, was it early 60s, wasn't it, the Stainmore line? Yeah. So, but that's the National Park are supportive. What about Cumbria County Council?
Many councillors like the idea. A lot of officers over the years have been enthusiastic about it, but we haven't managed yet to convince the leadership. There seems to be some sort of deep-rooted problem that we can't get to the bottom of. Various people on the council have gone to the leadership, said we should be supporting this, we've asked for letters of support, and it all goes silent. Nothing gets relayed back to us, but we hear from other people that it's either a politically ideological problem, perhaps a way of getting at the government. We've been told over the years by the county council railways are for government, for national government, so perhaps that means if railways aren't happening in Cumbria, the county council can blame the government. If we came along and conveniently built a railway, it would destroy a political argument.
Right, okay. But is it whatever the reason...
Which is unfortunate, yeah.
Whatever the reason, whether it's that or another reason, the fact that they're not on board with it, is that a problem for you? Does it make it harder to persuade government to back something if the county council isn't on side?
The county council is a crucial part of the plan because they are the local transport authority. National government therefore assumes that they are the voice of the county when it comes to transport. What we would have to do to build the railway is to get a piece of paper called a Transport and Works Order, which is permission to build and operate a public service railway. Now, we put the application into national government. It goes through the Department for Transport. They look at the technical case, the business case, and the next thing they do is they come back to the local authorities and say, does this fit with your plans and policies? And the first stop is the county council as a local transport authority. Now, because of this unwillingness to be involved, the railway does not appear in the local transport plan, although it did in the 1990s and then disappeared.
Right.
And there is absolutely nothing to show any support for the project at all. And the answer obviously is that the county council does not support the railway. That would mean that it would then either be rejected out of hand as not required, or it would have to go through an enormously complex and expensive inquiry process to prove the case, when all that would actually be needed is for the county council to say, yeah, that's a good idea, and save £1 million.
To some extent, perhaps, is the county council's role being usurped by Transport for the North, because this now it's a new statutory body. It's responsible for transport schemes across the whole of what we should loosely call the Northern Powerhouse area. It's just been consulting on its 30-year strategic plan. Have you had any conversations with Transport for the North?
We have been in contact with Transport for the North, and we've had some very good responses from them. They do not have the powers to overrule the county council. They are a strategic planning body, and they help manage the franchises for passenger train operation, but they're not a planning authority, and they don't have the legal responsibility to manage transport at a local level. That is still the county council, and in fact the county council is one of the bodies which forms Transport for the North and was a signatory to create Rail North, which is becoming part of it. So if you ask national government, they will say, and they have said in both houses in debates and so on, that local schemes should be developed locally and they should be promoted through the local authorities or the LEPs, and the LEP is controlled effectively by the county council. So we have a blockage.
So what are you doing to try and to persuade the county council to change its mind?
We've done as much as we can, talking to councillors, to portfolio holders. We've got other authorities to speak up, businesses to speak up. It's just a case of keeping the lobbying and the pressure going.
So realistically, I mean, if you could get a shift in position from the county council, how soon could the line reopen?
Within 3 to 4 years is realistic.
Okay, and is restoring the line as far as Keswick your sole ambition? I'm guessing it isn't actually. I mean, is the long-term aim to reinstate the whole of the route through to Workington? And is that even feasible? Because, you know, as you were saying earlier, the A66 is being built over part of the track bed alongside Bassenthwaite Lake. So, you know, would it not be prohibitively expensive to have to build a new alignment?
It is a completely different beast. Yes, we limited ourselves to Keswick Penrith at this stage because it's in good enough condition and it would have a high enough traffic level to stand as an independent commercial project. To go further, yes, it would be more expensive. The whole railway beyond Keswick to the coast would have to be built from scratch. We would not seek to go along the original alignment. There's no way anybody is going to even think about digging up the A66. It crossed up rivers in a lot of places. It went through some places that are now quite empty. It served collieries and things that have gone. What I have done is looked at some possible routes that would link Keswick and Workington, not too much of a deviation, but you could connect places like Cockermouth, Little Broughton, Great Broughton, Seaton, Broughton Moor even, on your way to Workington, link up communities that are there now that weren't there 150 years ago, or certainly not on the same scale, and create a different set of economic benefits. It could be done. You're right, it would be much more expensive. it would need a lot more political backing and a higher level of finance to do it. But it can be done.
Okay. Thanks very much for your time, Cedric.
Thank you.